travel friends, Kerry here again with some more spotlight on travel for you. We know it's not safe to travel right now, but we want to get you all set up so that when we're ready to go, you will be prepared. So today we're going to talk about different travel flight types. So there's 5 that I'd like to cover with you today. The first one is called a non-stop flight. So a non-stop flight is, exactly as it sounds, non-stop. So for example, from Toronto to Vancouver with no stop in between would be a non-stop flight. The flights that go from Thunder Bay to Toronto, non-stop flight. The second type of flight is a direct flight. Now this sometimes gets confused with a non-stop flight. A direct flight is not non-stop. A direct flight, a good example would be, let's take for example the Sunwing charter flights that leave out of Winnipeg, stop in Thunder Bay, people don't get off the airplane, and then continue on to Mexico. So a direct flight is starting in a destination, stopping along the way, passengers get on, nobody gets off the plane, and then it keeps going on to its destination. That's called a direct flight. So a couple of years ago, when we had flights from Thunder Bay to, I think it went to Windsor and then to Cancun, that was a direct flight. People would sometimes call it a non-stop flight, but it wasn't non-stop. It was direct. It takes you directly from your origin to your destination with a stop in between. So that's a direct flight. Another type of flight is a connecting flight. So this would be, for example, if you were traveling Thunder Bay to Toronto and then Toronto to Florida. So you get on your non-stop flight from Thunder Bay to Toronto, get off the airplane, get your bags, go on to the next airplane and get to Florida. That's called a connecting flight. You make a connection in another city. You get off the plane and onto another plane, you connect. There's also a flight called an OpenJaw flight. So OpenJaw flights are when you fly into one city and home from another. So let's take, for example, if you were traveling from Vancouver to Hawaii, and say you were flying into Honolulu, but then you were going to fly out of Maui because you were going to take a little cruise and it ends in Maui, so you're going to fly home from there. That's called an OpenJaw flight. Think of a jaw, because you're flying into one center and you're flying home from the other center. So that's called an OpenJaw flight. Another more Ontario example of that would be if you were flying into Sault Ste. Marie and then flying home from Sudbury because maybe you had some work to do or something. That would be a really good example of an OpenJaw flight. And then the last type of flight pattern would be called what we call a multi-city flight. You want to avoid these at all costs. That's when you visit multiple cities along the way. Now sometimes when you see that airfares are really reasonable, sometimes it's because it's a multi-city itinerary. So I know, for example, I think once I went to somewhere in the Caribbean, British Virgin Islands or somewhere, and the flight was Thunder Bay, Toronto, Toronto, Atlanta, Atlanta, Miami, Miami into the Virgin Islands. It's exhausting. And there's so many ways that you can miss your flights and misconnect. So please, if you have a chance and if you don't have to take that type of flight, avoid it at all costs. So non-stop flights, direct flights, connecting flights, OpenJaw flights, and multi-city flights. I hope you learned a little something today. And for Shaw Spotlight, I'm Kerry Berlinquette.